This is an introductory video to help you understand how to contribute to the Hiero SDK Python, or soon to be the Hiero SDK Python. I've already explained a little bit about the file structure and the general requirements that each transaction involves. Inside here, you have an open issues column. So when you click this, you'll learn about all the projects that are all the tasks that are available to work on. And Nadine created already an extensive code, body of code. But there are many other transactions to continue to build it. So for example, you could pick any of these and get started on them. All you need to do is get assigned to them. So let's say you want to contribute to token freeze transaction. Read the documentation carefully. Once you have done that, you need to claim this issue by commenting below that you're interested in working on this issue. For example, I am interested in working in this issue. I would click comment. Then Nadine will be informed that I want to work on this issue. And then secondly, wait for the assignment. This is important to make sure that multiple users aren't working on the same thing at a time. So once you become assigned, then you are ready to get started to work on the project. Now, what I would suggest is take some care to decide what token transactions you want to work on, or NFT transactions you want to work on. They are a little bit different, and some are easier than others. My first one that I had to go with was token delete. I found that one probably a little bit more difficult than token dissociate. So I want to explain a little bit about how to get more familiar with the requirements. So inside each of these files, Nadine will have informed you a bit about the requirements required to do this. I already explained the technical requirements from like a file perspective. So you need to create an example, you need to create the class, the unit tests, the network tests, and pass all of that. But being able to do that requires you to interpret the requirements of the Hiero network correctly. So what I would recommend is, look at this second one, the Hiero protobufs. If you look at the first one, file not found here, but it will be more like computer codes, computer language. So this is the one that I would recommend you look at. There is a third one. This is nice to look at, but it's not as detailed as the second one. And eventually, because you will need to be able to create transactions that work reliably, it's really important to make sure you have all the details. So yeah, this is a protobuf. And what I interpret from this, it's just essentially a way that your code has to match. So there's all these requirements of what needs to be done so that the Hiero network can understand your transaction and process your transaction. Right now, if you're working on Python, you'll be writing the output of that Python to be in a way that the Hiero network can understand, and that needs to be done in this exact way that they're detailing here. So for example, in your token dissociate transaction, you will need to have an account ID in exactly this format and a token ID in exactly this format. So for example, they tell you, okay, what does this actually mean? So you need an account identifier. It must be, for example, a valid account. It must exist. It mustn't be deleted. It mustn't be expired. So all of these requirements. And you are able to explore more about the account ID if you kind of dig into that, and I'll show you how to do that in the future. Same with token ID, it's going to have to be exactly in this way. So it's a list, but it can't be empty. It has to have a valid token identifier, all of these requirements. So you should read, in my opinion, the protobuf to understand the scope of the transaction that you're diving into and how complex are the requirements. So token dissociate, not too bad because there's just these kind of two major account and token requirements. There are usually more as well, so just watch out. You might have like signing requirements or something like this. So it's also, in addition to that, you also need to read any of the prior things. So I think token dissociate, yeah, some of these, read carefully because some of these will also involve some other token transactions that might impact your token transaction. So I can't remember exactly, but I think I was working on token delete and the token dissociate. They had some kind of things impacting each other, and I needed to also bear that into account. So read these carefully to understand like the underlying kind of complexity. So token dissociate wasn't too bad. Another way that I was able to assess the difficulty of token dissociate was to look at the code that already existed. So you can see here in the code, we talked about how Nadine had already created extensive documentation for token associate. I'm trying to find it now. So this is, for me, probably the biggest help as a new person getting involved with the Python SDK, to be able to have examples of sort of like the opposite transaction or very similar transactions was really helpful to help to kind of backwards induce the logic and be able to also understand like more subtle, more subjective things like decisions with how to write the code and what to do in certain contexts. So token dissociate was probably a good place to get started. Token delete required me not just to create token delete, but I also had to amend a couple of other issues that I probably won't go into. So I found that one a little bit more difficult. But yeah, you can look through all of these and then assess which one is useful to you. And now you know how to say you want to get started. So I'm going to said I wanted to work on this, and Nadine has said happy to assign this and wait for the assignment and then get started. Okay, so the next video will be, now that you've become assigned to a project, the next video will explain how to fork the project and get started on that in your local environment.